Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's live stream. Pretty excited to talk about OTbase Inventory 7.1. And as always, this will be recorded and made available after the presentation ends. From here, I'll turn it over to Mr. Langner to walk us through the new updates.
Thanks, Braxton. Also, thank you very much for attending. Let's talk about OTbase Inventory 7.1. If you do have a license, you may have asked yourself, well, where is the binary? I did get a notification for the release notes, but I didn't get a notification about the binary. I can't find the binary. Well, that's right. You don't see the binary. I will make it available after this webinar, but not earlier, because I want to protect you from yourself. Since there is breaking functionality in this new version that we will talk about just in a minute, and we all know how it goes. You know, it says in the release notes, breaking functionality, read this first, but many people just skip that part. Oh, I will just check it out on my own, right? And that could then backfire. So let's look at the most important stuff first. I'm going to just open the release notes here. You see this red, Braxton, maybe we can share my screen here. You see this red box. This is about CVs. This is a very important new function, or let's just say a mandatory update. What's going on here? NIST, who is the gatekeeper, the master organization who maintains all the CVEs, they have decided to introduce a new data format at the beginning of next month. And this means that all software companies that provide some CVE processing functionality in their products, they must update their technology as well, especially since the old format is being deprecated. It will no longer be supported. So therefore, we went through that hassle and made all the necessary changes in OTbase Inventory, which you will remember automatically pulls the CVE information from NIST and then automatically marries it to your installed base. Okay, that is going to happen as well in the future after you install the new release, and you will barely notice any difference in functionality. The problem is that since this is a new data format, we need to build a whole new CVE database within OTbase Inventory. That also means that the old database is scrapped. Now, why is that important? You may remember that you have the opportunity in OTbase Inventory to make some adjustments to CVE. So for example, if my tree thinks the severity of a CVE is high, you could set that to critical. If your assessment arrives at a different conclusion based on your context, etc. You could also change CVEs for specific devices to irrelevant, because you might have introduced compensating controls for mitigation. If you have done that, this data will be lost when you install the update. That's the important thing. Don't forget that, right? If you haven't done any of that, you don't need to worry. Let's just log in here. So if you never changed the priority of CVEs and never changed the relevance and and did any comments for your devices, right? So when you look at the details page here, that some of you may not even know existed in the first place, but here is where you can make comments and save comments for individual devices and individual CVEs. If you did that, those comments, all those changes will be lost. If you never did that, go ahead, install the update, and you don't have to worry about anything. All that functionality will work just smoothly as it did previously. If you did, however, make those changes and you want to keep them because it's, let's just say, several hundred changes, then what you should do is you should open a ticket in our ticket system. Tell us in more or less specific language what changes you made, and then we will work with you to migrate those changes to the new database on a case-by-case basis. So that's very important. If you are not sure if it affects you, check with your system experts before you install the update. Now, let's just assume you have been through that process, or you have determined, well, it doesn't affect us because we never bothered to change any priority assessments, etc. And you just go ahead and install the update. What you will see is that right after the update, all these vulnerability tables will be blank. Right? This list here will be blank, nothing in there, because it's going to take a couple of hours until all that CVE data is being pulled again and computed and mingled together with your asset information. So that's going to take a while. Don't be surprised when all the CVEs are gone. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden all your OT devices are now secure. No more vulnerabilities. So that would be certainly perfect, but it's not that easy with OT vulnerability management. They will come back, just like the Terminator. They will be back, and they will continue to haunt you. So if you want to speed up that process, what you can do is you go to maintenance if you have administrative rights. And in the metadata tab, you will then click import now or post-process now. As you may know, in this page, you will see the number of CVEs in the local database for all those years. So the whole CVE thing started back in 1999. And for all these years, you will see a graph that indicates the number of CVEs for that year. And while you import this new data set from NIST in the new data format, you will see this table filling up from 1999 and going forward, okay? Now, here is another important aspect. You will see there is a new field here in the upper left corner. It's called CVE API key. With this change, NIST now suggests that you should obtain an API key from NIST for your organization. If you do that, you will copy and paste that API key in this field and then click on Save. You don't have to do that at this time. The difference is if you have an API key, the download of the data is a little bit faster. If you don't provide an API key, we cannot pull as many data at one time. So this is a paged operation. But OTbase Inventory completely compensates for that. So even if you don't provide an API key, you will be able to download all the CVEs. It's just going to take maybe a couple of hours longer. If you don't care about that, you don't need to bother getting an API key from NIST. So that's the important breaking functionality if you have inserted any comments in the CVE details, if you made any changes to the priorities or to the relevance field. If you didn't do any of that, you don't need to worry. Install OTbase Inventory 7.1 right away. Lean back and enjoy the show. Good. So let's see what other improvements are in there. In the workflow section, we do have not just the CVE workflow, we also have problem management. And in earlier versions, the problem management was only accessible for users with full inventory access. That was on purpose, but customers complained about that. And so we changed this in OTbase Inventory 7.1. So now every user will be able to use the problem management workflow. The limitation is that they might see, oh, there is a problem. Let's just say for this Rockwell 1756 ENBT. I'm just making this up here. But they might not be able, or most likely not be able to see all the affected devices, all the affected instances that they would see when they had, if they had full inventory access. That is a limitation. They might not see any device at all if in their respective scope of responsibility and permissions, none of these affected devices actually reside. The problem statement, the problem listing might be worthwhile anyway, because they might just consider to introduce that product into their environment. Okay, so that is new. The next improvement is something that I find very cool, and it was actually suggested or requested by a customer, and it has to do with the scope selector. So this scope selector, if you have used OTbase Inventory already, you will most likely have used the scope selector, because it limits, it allows you to limit the universe of devices or CVEs or whatever that you actually see, or systems, locations, and so on. And in the scope selector, we have added a new hierarchy level for networks. And this is what you see here. So these first entries here refer to network groups. Just as a quick reminder, in OTbase Inventory, you can define your own network groups, and what those could be is, I think for every control engineer, it's pretty obvious, right? Because in OT, you have sets of network types that perform very, very similar functions, such as real-time I/O or safety networks, or don't touch my safety network, right? So don't mess with any devices in that network. Be super, super cautious when you change any firewall settings that allow or restrict access to that network. And so this is an extremely useful feature. And now you can limit the scope based on a network group, whereas in previous versions, you could only limit the scope to an individual network. So here we could say, well, we only want to see CVEs that affect any device in a given type of network, such as safety, okay? And when I do that, I would see right away, oh, you know, in our safety networks, whatever those might be, I mean, I could see that by opening that next stage, and I see, oh, there's in this database, in the sample database, there is only one safety network, but in yours, it could be 10 or 50, right? And in that safety network, we have devices with CVEs that affect Adobe Acrobat Reader. Then, as usual in OTbase, I could see right away where those devices are. Okay, and that is something I hope and I think that will make a lot of sense, especially to process engineers who usually define criticality based on network type. and priority based on network type, right? So if you have these vulnerabilities on devices in a safety network, you would probably say, well, wait a second, this is something that we need to fix with priority. So it is just another angle for your vulnerability management strategy. Just as a reminder, recently I did a webinar totally devoted to vulnerability management strategy. So you may want to check that out if you haven't seen that webinar. It's on YouTube in our YouTube channel. And that would be one other strategy on prioritization, where you really want to start with your mitigation operations. And this is something that you will see in any of the scope selectors. So let's just say we go to the inventory, where we also have a scope selector. Then we could also just limit that, let's just say, to real-time networks, just like that. And we would see only devices that reside in real-time networks. And again, just as a quick reminder, these network groups is something that you can define on your own in extended network groups. A couple of those come with a product pre-populated, but there are just suggestions because they make sense for most users. But you can define your own networks groups. You can assign any color code that you want so that your network inventory then might look something like this, okay? And then from those, using those groupings, I can limit the scope. Good. Next feature that we're going to look at is tag management. It's also in the extended section, also requested by another customer. In case you didn't know, in OTbase Inventory, you can assign your custom-defined tags to devices, locations, networks, systems, whatever. If you do that in previous versions, if you wanted to get an idea, well, which tags do I have? What's in my universe of assets? You would always have to open a device listing in edit mode, and that sucked. So what we did here in 7.1 is we added a tag management page in the extended section, where you can now see all the defined tags. You would also see, oh, you know, there are a couple of tags highlighted in boldface. Those are system tags that are automatically assigned by OTbase, and all the other stuff that is assigned by users. And as you may know, for any tag, you can also define a color code and then do with that tag whatever you want. In the inventory, you will then be able to filter the listings based on tags or combinations thereof. The other thing that you can do here is you can also sort the listing, like with by number of devices that have that tag, or number of CVEs, right? So for example, what you see here, there are 9 CVEs to which somebody has applied the tag Google Chrome. Obviously, because those CVEs have something to do with Google Chrome in respect to the problems and the systems. Okay, so this is how that works, and I think it's going to take your tag management to a whole new level and encourage you to use tags, which is always a very useful thing to do. Good. Next feature that we have introduced is, you may have seen, I hope so, you may have seen file attachments So if you look at any device and open it in edit mode, you can attach files here, any number of files. That could be project files, documentation, your favorite Excel sheet, whatever you want, pictures of your girlfriend, I don't care. And you could do the same thing for products. So no matter if you're talking about hardware products or software products. And then a customer said, well, you know, that is also great, but I also want to see product file attachments in the device profile, right? So if there are any files attached to a device, you would have a files section in the profile. Let me show you that in the release notes. There we go. And this is where you have the file section. And I also want to see the file attachments for the products also in here, which then saves the user the hassle to, if they want to check all their additional documents, etc., for the product, then they would have to open the product profile in previous versions. Now that is eliminated because you will see the product file attachments also in the device profile. So in other words, it's some kind of inheritance. The device inherits file attachments from the product, and that affects the hardware product and the software products, and also the systems of it might be part of. So saves you and your users a lot of time when you actually use attachments, which I encourage you to do, because if you have never thought about it, what you can and basically should do is turn OTbase Inventory in your central OT documentation hub, so that the engineers, all the stakeholders can put all their specific documentation in there for easy access. So for example, if somebody works from home or somebody is on holiday leave and you need to still work with their files, this is so much easier if you can access those in the device profiles just like that. Okay, next improvement is in the search page, where for all the products that you can select here, you can also now do bulk select. So let me show you how that works. Let's just assume we want to filter for, no, not for Langner group. You want to filter for control, or no, Studio 5000 or something like that. Studio 5000. Okay. Logix Designer. That's a good product. I love that product. And now let's say you want to select multiple versions. That didn't work in previous versions. Now you can just do a multi-select with either a control click or shift click, just like so. And this allows you to quickly select a bunch of versions for which you then can get the output, right? So you would see right here, all of these results, all of these devices in your result set run any of the product versions that you have selected here. Why is that totally awesome? Because you are going to need that functionality for processing Rockwell product notices and safety advisories. Yes, and now it works just like a charm. This will give you the list of affected devices for, let's just say, a Rockwell product notice. And since we are in the search page, you may remember, I can save my search. And when I do that, it will automatically create a report that you can then access in the reports page. So as I have done here earlier, right? So this is a report that has to do with a Rockwell product notice. You can see the identifier up here. That affects Studio 5000 Logix Designer versions 31 through 35. Right, so I ran that search in the search page, as I've shown you earlier, saved that, which automatically turns it into a report, and certainly the engineer will now update or delete all these Windows boxes that are listed here, right? And certainly the good thing here is that you will see in the timeline what your progress is, right? So you can see here, a couple of weeks ago, some of these devices were fixed, so to speak. And you would also see that right here in the widget, we have 50 left, right? So super cool feature. Then we have a couple of REST API extensions and changes. The one thing that I want to point out is that you can now also access the documentation field for devices that wasn't available in previous versions of OTbase Inventory. And this is super important and helpful if you want to link an existing document server with your asset information as maintained by OTbase. So in that case, you would write a script that assigns the link of your document server, like the specific product, the specific device page, the asset information to that device. And then you would see that data in the device profile, and it is clickable. So with one click, you would open the additional documentation that you have for this device in the document server. If you maintain your documents centrally and don't want to just pull everything out and store it in OTbase, as I said earlier, with the file attachment. So you have both opportunities. If you have a central document management system, this is probably what you would want to use. So that is basically it. That's the most important stuff that I wanted to share. And with that, we can open it up for questions if there are any.
So it doesn't look like there are any immediate questions. I definitely encourage everybody to go over to the website and join the support community and reach out to us directly if you have any follow-up questions from today's live stream. I'll give it a couple extra seconds here to see if anybody comes through with a question, but appreciate everybody tuning in this morning, this afternoon, and welcome you guys to reach out to us for more information.
And by the way, the binary will be up on our download server in a couple of minutes. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.